What we have today is something that I meant to talk about last week or the week before. I think this has been published for almost 10 days now, so I'm big time behind on the news here. This entire thing here, this rare find of vintage video games unearthed in Dallas like a true treasure hunt. This entire article is stemming from the $90,000 Castlevania sale. This is coming from the $80,000 Kid Icarus. It turns out that those two games that sold on eBay made big headlines, big waves. Those were actually just the tip of the iceberg. It turns out that those games and the rest of this find, if we can call it a find, we'll go into full details as to why all this stuff exists, but this find of games is actually going to become one of the biggest, most expensive video game finds ever. And this story is amazing because someone here, they're consigning all this stuff to Heritage Auction. Someone from this is going to make a ton of money and this is going to be a feel-good story. But on the other side of that, there's absolute heartbreak. The circumstances that led to all of this existing and this becoming a find in 2024 are not really good. And we're going to have a little bit of a tough conversation in this video about contingency planning so that you do not end up like this. But a huge thanks to Heritage Auctions for sponsoring this video. More on that in a bit. Say thank you to the patrons who help support the channel. Hit the like button and let's dive into this because we have an amazing video game find to talk about today. So we know there were the Castlevania and the Kid Icarus. And when I spoke to Tom on interview here about the Castlevania game, I did ask him if there were a ton of other games. The Kid Icarus and Castlevania came from the same estate sale. From that estate sale, there were multiple buyers. So it's fully possible that Tom bought the Castlevania from the one guy and the Kid Icarus seller is the one who got all of this. But when I talked to Tom, he did not know all of this exists. Whether or not the seller was just keeping that all private because he was already setting up here with Heritage Auctions, I don't know. But from the Kid Icarus on eBay and the Castlevania from eBay, Heritage Auctions was able to reach out to one of those two sellers here and arrange to go and see the rest of the collection. The article says here, quoting Chris Bierenbach, that's from Heritage. I might be saying his last name wrong, I apologize there. But Chris says here, as we walked into his living room and I saw the games piled on the kitchen table and arranged in several different boxes, I knew that we were in for a special ride. The meeting lasts for more than 4 hours, with the specialists at Heritage sorting through the endless boxes of nearly perfectly preserved vintage video games, the likes of which they had never seen in one place. And in the picture here, we have Urban Champion, gloss sticker seal, first print copy, The Legend of Zelda first print looking real gemmy, Metroid first print hang tab copy, and Bubble Bobble hanging out with all of these other $100,000 games. The thing with this find here, right, and it says there's 166 games, 90% of them are sealed. This picture here of these 4 games, this is like $300,000 to $500,000 right there, especially having another TM first print Zelda appear. When we first saw this come to auction in, I don't even know, probably 2021 it was, the big thing was like, oh my god, there's only 2 or 3 of these known to exist. We just had another one come out, right? The $288,000 one. That was a brand new first print Zelda that was found. So now this is another one, and the population on this might be getting up to 5, 6, 7 known copies now, which in some ways is probably a bad thing. Some people probably see this as a bad thing. It's too much supply, right? Ruins how special it is. Personally, I see this as a fantastic thing. Grail items like a first print factory sealed Legend of Zelda, if more of those exist, more people can enter into the hobby, right? Even Action Comics #1, the most rarest comic, the most sought after comic that exists, I'm pretty sure there's 90 of them. And that's from absolute awful condition all the way up to really nice ones, right? There's 90 of them. Nintendo World Championships has 90 of them. It is absolutely okay if first print Zelda keeps climbing. I hope that these games, first print Metroid, first print black box games, I hope those populations keep climbing into the future. And frankly, just given how young this hobby still is, it's very, very likely that we still do keep finding finds just like this. We're not going to find warehouses with 50 copies of The Legend of Zelda in it. That's not what's going to happen. But as this article goes on to say here, the reason that this stuff exists is because starting in the 1980s, when these two brothers were already in their 60s, they began purchasing hundreds of video games, often buying multiples of the same title, keeping them sealed and in pristine condition for decades. So that's why I say this find here, this pedigree is more organic. We had people in the 1980s here, two brothers, who were buying up these games far before they were ever worth buying up, right? Like, if they were buying this stuff for the past 30, 40 years, they were just buying it at retail and keeping it in a closet. There was no reason to be doing this. This is as organic as it gets. The notion of factory sealed being special or collectible has always existed. It's just always been pretty niche until, you know, the whole explosion 2021. But the really tough part about this whole article, right? We have this buyer who has these games. They're going to consign to heritage auctions. They're going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? So congratulations to the person who is consigning this all. The awful part here is that the article goes on to say, right, we have these two brothers who have been collecting everything since the 80s, mint condition games. After their deaths, these hidden gems were sold off by their estate with no knowledge of their potential value. So that's where this whole thing, it's not the incredible feel-good story. You know what I mean? We have people who truly love this stuff, who were collecting this stuff, who died, who then had their estate sell it off with no knowledge of the value. Everything they had collected was sold for pennies on the dollar. It's truly the classic story, right? Of like, oh my God, you're gonna die and your kids are gonna sell all your stuff at a garage sale. That is literally what happened here. I don't know who's part of the estate. I don't know if there's blame to place on the estate for not doing proper valuation. I don't know any details like that. But the thought of everything I have done, my life's work, if that's what you want to refer to this as, right? We put a lot of our life into our collection. But the thought of it all just being sold off for pennies on the dollar for someone else to just profit off it, man, that just like it kills me inside, right? That hurts. And that's that tough conversation that I want to talk to you guys a little bit about here is, do you have a plan in place for a loved one, for your kids, for your brother, for your parents, someone in your family, in your close vicinity, where if you were to get hit by a car tomorrow, no, you get hit by a bus tomorrow, what happens to your collection? Is there a plan to get rid of your stuff? Is there any way for anyone else to know what your stuff is worth? And in a lot of ways now, 2024, it can be as easy as giving your loved one, whoever it is, giving them consignment information, right? You can just give your person the consignment info for heritage auctions. It's a sponsored video. I gotta make a nod to heritage. But truly, give information of a game store, of a consignment service, of someone that a loved one can contact to help sell your stuff at its actual value. And I do emphasize to give the information of another game store, of a reseller, of someone who can make this easy. Because if you were to pass away unexpectedly, I promise that the last thing anyone wants to do is deal with your collection. No one appreciates your stuff as much as you do. I promise that they just want, most people are just going to want the stuff gone. And what you want to do is to make it as easy as possible for your loved ones and hopefully get a decent chunk out of it. This is what happens right here if you don't talk about this stuff. It's a conversation no one wants to have, but this is what happens. And maybe it's just the selfish part of me, but I don't want someone else to win off of my collection. I want my girlfriend to be the one to cash all this out. I want my family to be the ones to benefit. If someone's gonna sell all this stuff, I want it to stay within my circle. But that is the one part of the story here that just holds me back from it truly being incredible, because despite all of these games being found and this is amazing for the hobby, it's just absolutely heartbreaking to hear that that's how this stuff was initially liquidated. Almost $200,000 worth of games have already went to eBay. By the time this is all said and done, this find, along with these games here, the Zelda, Urban Champion, everything here could amount to close to $1 million worth. So just please, if you take away anything from this, make a plan with your loved ones. Make this weekend your contingency planning weekend. Just put some information in place. On a lighter note, the article does go on to explain here that everything from this collection is going to be graded with CGC. That's the other interesting note, because we're talking about heritage auctions, right? They're going to be auctioning everything off. The entire collection is going through CGC. Now, this is just rumor speculation on my part. There's been nothing actually confirmed, but it seems in 2024 here, and I think we're even starting to see it in 2023, Heritage is using CGC a lot more. It seems like CGC is the company that they are defaulting towards. towards? Obviously 2019 through 2022, it was all WATA games, baby. But now we are seeing a shift to CGC being utilized a lot more here. And CGC getting this collection now is that's huge for them as a business. It's huge for them in exposure. We all know that once this stuff sells at auction, right, we're gonna see articles, we're gonna see pumping, we're gonna see marketing take place. So for CGC to be getting all of these games is really, really big for them as a company. Will this push CGC over WATA? Is CGC gonna take over the grading sphere? I don't know anything like that. This hobby is still really young, right? Any of the three big companies, WATA, CGC, or even VGA, could be the market leader come 2026. And the last thing is that, yes, all of these games, 166 of them is what the official count is, all of these are going to be coming to Heritage Auctions in August. August 2024 signature auction, I think, is where most of them are slated for. We're going to get a full CGC list once they're all graded. We'll have more information coming up, but start saving up your money because you have about 4 months until this auction is going to hit, and it is going to be crazy. If you have any questions about consigning with Heritage, the process, anything like that, video games at ha.com to reach out. I personally have some items coming up in the Japanese showcase auction, and I'm super excited to see what they sell for. Let me know in the comments if you do already have a contingency plan. I'm curious how many of you guys have actually had the conversation with someone. Hit the like button, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.